What's up, everybody? It's Like So5 in the Vidyuu account with Jordan, Giggles, and Addie. We are going to be building a throw your friends mechanic. If you haven't seen something like this before, I encourage you to check out the one by why is this? Elastic Plastic. He built a world called Throw Your Friends, and this will definitely be inspired by that. I'm realizing I'm playing music. Okay, Google, pause. Don't get us demonetized. Let's go. So the first thing we're going to do is head to our asset library and search for the object return script. It's running on the salt and pepper shaker. So when you pull the salt and pepper shaker out, only keep the script. We'll go ahead and delete everything else. And so this object return script just includes a bunch of fanciness to make sure that this object is getting returned. And so the object that we're building is called the throw ball. So the throw ball. And the things that we want to build into this throw ball, we don't really need to worry about the return script. It's going to do its own thing. So what I like to do is grab over here under the values tab, a comment, and then just comment out this section and call this return script below. And so that just tells me later on what am I looking at when I'm reading my script. Okay, so return script below. And then above this is where we're going to build the throwing ball script. And so what we need to know is some really interesting information. We need to know a new object variable, which will be the text object to tell us which person are we throwing. So this will be the text object, and that is going to display the name of the player. Excuse me. And then we need a list of all the players in the world. So we're going to create a player list, which will be called plids. Now, if anyone is watching in the world with me, you guys can just tap on this. I don't expect you to try and write the script yourself. I'm going to go really fast, so I apologize, but you're definitely welcome to watch here or try to recreate when you watch the video back later.
Yes.
So then now that we've got these two variables, we need to create a list of players that we can then cycle through, and we need to know who the current player ID is. To know where we are at in this list, what I recommend we do is create a number variable, which we're going to call I. I stands for index and represents where we are at currently in this list of players. So with that set up, there's a lot of things that are happening here. The first thing we need to do is create a list of all the players who are active in the world. To do that, we scroll down to player events where you'll see player enters world and player exits world. We're going to drag those events over to above our comment from before. And with world enter and exit there, we can now go in and add and remove players from the list. I'm going to show you the really easy way first, and then we're going to do the more safe way second. So first we grab the add to list, then we get the remove item from list, and we put that in world exit, drag player into the value slot, and then go over here to grab the list and drop that into the list slot, thumbsticking to the right to duplicate. Now with this here, this is the easy way. This should work 100% of the time, but Horizon is full of bugs, as we are all very painfully aware. And so at one point in time, there was a bug where it would add 2 players to a list, and I assume there's other bugs out there. So what I always do is add this if statement to both my world enter and exit. And what I do check for is to see if the list contains the player. So make sure that the list does not contain the player here. We'll scroll back down to the bottom where we can grab the list contains item. We grabbed not from the top, so that makes it opposite of whatever this is. So this says, does the list contain the item? Now it says, does it not contain the item? So we'll drag player down into the item slot and list into the list spot. I always mix these up, so make sure your list is in the left and your item is in the right. Otherwise it won't work. Now we can then select this contains word and then thumbstick to the right to duplicate it here, noting that I selected this piece, not this piece. If I selected the not, it would have included that on this if. We'll then drag this and indent there so that it is on. There we go. So now we are making sure to add players to the list as long as they are not in this list, and we're removing them as long as they are in the list. And this makes sure we have very nice, healthy and safe lists. And so what I like to do again is just create some more comments in here, which would say create player list. Okay, so we got the create player list, and we'll delete this. So that kind of just defines what are we doing in this section. And I'm going to make sure it's spelled correctly because I sure assume this script is going to get passed around a lot. So there we go. We got the create player list, and that's happening there. So then the next thing we need to do is think, what is the last step with this text object? And that's displaying the text. And so we want to create a display event that will update the text object. So we're going to go to our events page, grab when event is received and put that above here. And then I also want to think, so we could create a display event, but I'm also thinking, what is the action that causes the display to update? And we're going to do when index trigger is pressed by the player. So the controller events down here has when index trigger is pressed. So we'll go ahead and grab that here. And so what we could do is have when index trigger is pressed, send a display event. Now this would be, what I want to say is we could put all of the display updating inside this when index trigger is pressed while grabbed by player, but the problem is if a player leaves the world, we need to update the display because somebody might have left the list. So we're going to go ahead and create a new event called display, and this just prevents our script from trying to select a player that is out of index. You'll get an out of index error because the I value is no longer correct if people have left the world and it tries to throw a player that's not actually selected. Okay, so when index trigger is pressed while grabbed by player, then we have when display is received, and then what I think we should do is a number value called, maybe not, I'm thinking about it. We'll come back to that idea. Okay, so in the display event, we want to go to our actions tab and grab display text. We'll then drop that into here, and then we're displaying this not on self, but on the text object that we had referenced under our variables tab. So now that we have the text object there, we have display. What do we want to display? Well, we want to display the name of a player, and that's all we want to display. So we're going to go to the operators tab and scroll up to player, name of player, dropping that into here. And then the player that we're referencing is get item from list. So down here, you've got get item from list. We'll drop that into the player pill slot. The list is this list here, and the item is the item at index I. So we drop that I into here. And now we've gotten the player who is at index I. Now you'll note that I is 0 by default. And there's also another problem, which is what if there are no players in the list? What if everybody has left the world? Or maybe you adjust the code somehow. And so what we want to do is make sure that there are items in the list. So we say, if I is, excuse me, we want to use the less than symbol, just thinking through my thoughts here. So we're going to check that I is within the index. So we go grab length of list. And let me walk you through why this works. Down here we have length of list, and then we've got the plids list. And so what we've now said is if the I value is less than the length of plids, we can then update the display. If it's not less than the length of plids, then we know that this is out of index. And so you can imagine that if this is 0, it's referencing the first player in the list, which would be a length of 1 if there's only one player in the list. And that is okay because 0 is less than 1. Now, if there's 2 players and this is at index of 1 for the second player in the list, that's also okay. But if this is at, say, 3 and there's only 2 players in the list because maybe somebody's left the world, we would then have it be out of index and we wouldn't want to update the display because that would cause a bug. And so what we want to do is else this and say, okay, if it is out of index, we will then display not item I, but we will display item I, but we'll adjust what I means and set I to be 0. And so having written this out, I've also realized that I can add some efficiency to the script, which is to say, okay, this is cool and all, but we can actually drop this down to here and delete this one here. And so now we've said if I is less than length of plids, we do nothing, else we set I to be 0. And so actually we want to do something slightly different here, which is to create a different if statement structure. And let me finish it and then I can hopefully explain it a little better. So the first thing that we want to do is think about this if statement I is less than length of. We want to make sure that there is something to display. And so we're going to check that I, if it's at 0, is still less than the length of the plids. But realistically, we just need to know that the, this is fine. This is totally fine. So we display last, and then this else statement needs to happen first because we still want to update the display. And so we have to set I to 0, but not using an else because we need it to happen first. And so then the if statement to ask for this is the opposite of this, right? So it says, is I greater than? And so we can go grab the greater than symbol from the top here. And so it's actually greater than or equal to, which I'll also explain. So we say if I is greater than or equal to length of player IDs, then set I to 0. Okay, so with that done, we have gone and said if I is greater than or equal to length of plid, set I to 0, and then we run if I is within the index, then display the item. Okay, so our display is very safe. It's a very safe display. And so the question we have to ask now is, when world is exited by a player, we are removing an item from the list, so we need to send this display event. We also need to send display when triggers is pressed and grabbed, while grabbed. So we'll go grab the send event to object, and we're sending the display event to self. And we also need this, so I'm thumbsticking to the right to duplicate. And we also need this down here when the world is exited by a player. We could use this in world is entered by player as well. I'm going to put this at the bottom, and I am just going to put it here. So this will update the display when a player enters and when a player exits. The query that's in my head, the thing that's constantly active that I'm kind of thinking about is, what happens if the player holding this ball is thinking they're about to throw so-and-so, and then somebody new is added to this list and they're about to throw the wrong person. And so to account for that, I have an idea which is a little bit different. Let's see. What am I going to do? Dun, 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 dun. Display will set a Boolean variable called can throw. Boolean can throw. Okay. And enter, click confirm. So can throw is by default false. And so in this here, if we know that the player is out of index, we know people have left, and this has shifted. What I was thinking about doing is shifting it to a player variable rather than the number I, which I love the number I, but it's really useful in the index trigger is pressed event, less use display event. So the thought is we create a new player variable called current plid. And so this idea is that we're constantly updating the current plid when you press your index trigger to cycle through the names. And so then this check is less about checking item I, although I guess we could still do that here. But that will actually happen up in this one. So I'm just going to drag this up for a second. So then what we need to do is not check if I is less than length of plids. What we actually need to check is if the list contains that player. So we need to check if the plids list contains our current plid. And if they do, when we come to display, we can then display their name. And then we can do an else. And the else will say something like empty or null. So we'll go and grab duplicate this one down into the else statement, grab a string input, and drop this and just type in null. So you'll know the player has cleared out. So if you need to, so basically the display will update when the player leaves the world or when the player enters the world, which I guess we don't need to update when the player enters the world, but it would be kind of nice to do when the player enters the world so you can see who is at index 0 when you pick it up. So that seems like that's a good idea. And then when the player exits the world, it updates. And I guess it wouldn't set the current plid in this display event. So I guess we can delete that. Okay, so good. So now we've got a way to check if the player has left while you had them selected without accidentally throwing them because we have the current plid variable in place. And then up here when the index is index trigger is pressed, we need to start by setting I to be +1. And so what we're going to do is cycle through the list. So we need to use the modulus symbol, which I'll explain in just a moment. We grab the plus symbol for the left side. And then what we're doing is setting I to be +1. But what do we do when it gets to the end of the list? That's where the modulus symbol comes into play. What modulus will do is it'll switch us back to 0. So when it hits the length of list, which is length of player IDs, that is when we're going to switch it back to 0 and start from the beginning. So it just goes 0, 1, 2, 3, back to 0, 1, 2, 3 if there's 4 players in the world. Okay, so with that done, we actually don't need this anymore. Grab I and put that on the left side as well. So now we're increasing I every single time. Now that we've set I, we can actually update our current player as well. So we'll set the current player ID to be the item that was at I in the plids. So we'll actually thumbstick the right there. And then we don't need to do get item, this one down here that we were doing. We actually do this name of current plid. So fixing that, set current plid to get item I from the plids list, and then sending display. And that works great. Okay, so now we've got a display that displays which player we have selected. And so the next step is to throw the player. And so we want to know when the object is released by player. Let's go find this. When object is released by player, and this is self because this is running on self. And so I'm going to actually also add another comment here just to kind of explain that this piece of script below is the select a player script. Select player, there we go. Okay, so now we've got a way to select player, that's what that is. And then when object is released by player, this is how we throw said player. And so we're going to add an if statement, which will say, if can throw is true. And so to find out if can throw is true, we need to know that the current player ID is in the world and that some item has been selected. And so to check this, we're going to do that same thing before. In fact, I'm going to show you a new trick that I've been doing quite often recently, which is setting a variable, a Boolean variable like this one. So we set can throw to be, is the current player in the list? So we go and drag this up here and say, is the current plid still in the plids list? And if they are, we'll set can throw to be true because this is returning a Boolean value. Plids contains current plid, either returns true or false. So it sets can throw to be either true or false. And now we could just throw this in here. So I'm thinking we might just put this in here and delete the variable entirely. But if we needed like some other ways to set can throw to be true or false, we would use that variable. But anyway, we're not using it anywhere else, so we'll be okay with this. Okay, so when object is released by player, if we can throw, we're then going to, I was thinking about another way to use that. No, it's okay. I think we're good. Okay, so what we need to know is the let go position. So we're creating a vector position called let go position. And there we go. So confirm, and we're going to set the let go position to be the current position that the player has let go. And so we'll go grab the position of self from object transform right at the top of operators there. So that is going to be for self. I just have a self built here, so I'll thumbstick the right to duplicate it, but you can also find it under the values tab right there under value input. So we set let go to position of self. Now that we've saved the current position, because we know that this player is in the list, we can then go ahead and throw them. So we're going to send an event with a delay. And as I'm thinking about this, I'm just kind of like thinking about optimizing the script as we go. And thinking about it. I think it's okay to do this. So we're going to do this slightly differently. So right here, we were setting current plid to be get item I. And sorry to just backtrack a little bit, but what I want to actually do is slightly different. So we're going to delete item I. It's just not going to be a thing anymore. And so what we're going to replace this with is the get index of item. So we're going to replace the I value, so we can actually just go delete it from this list, with a new code block from our list code blocks called index of item in list. And so, oh man, does this work though if they're not in the list? It does. I'll explain why in a second. Okay, so we get the index of the current player ID in the list plids, and then we add one to it, and then we modulus length of plids. So what happens if the player is not in the list, like they've left the world? It returns a value of -1. And so if it returns -1 and you add 1, it brings you back to the beginning of list, which is 0. And so that's perfect. So anytime a player leaves, it'll just set you back to 0. So this is fantastic. So now we can grab this modulus, which is the entire line there, and drop this into the number. So it's a really long line. Using I definitely cleaned this up a little bit, but this, I think, is the way to go because it just makes our script a little easier. I think a little easier, a little lighter. Okay, so back over here to the throwing mechanic. So I'm just going to add this comment to the top since this is the actual throwing. And so we'll just call this the throw player portion. And capital TH throw. Okay, so the throw player portion. So now we're going to send an event called launch. Launch is going to launch the player, and we'll go ahead and click confirm, but we only want to launch after it's been thrown. So you imagine you throw the ball or whatever it is, and 1 second later, it's going to calculate the distance that the ball has traveled in that 1 second. And we could do it less than that. We could do like half a second perhaps, which would make it a little more responsive. So we'll try half a second and see. And so then we're going to go back over here, scroll up to when event is received. And so when event launch is received, we are going to check how far has this gone. And if it has gone a reasonable distance, we are then going to move the player. If it has not gone whatever a reasonable distance is, we do not want to launch the player because we're afraid of causing players to shake. And so the launching mechanic is actually under motion. We have the player motion, add player physical velocity. We're going to drag that into launch. This is the goal. It's to add velocity to the current player ID. And it's going to be by the direction vector that is the current position minus the let go position. I might have those numbers in the wrong positions in the minus symbol, but we'll test it and figure out. So we grab the current position, position of self, minus let go position, and that's going to be the direction that we want to launch the player. Now this theoretically works right off the bat, but I did want to quickly, and so like if you weren't writing a script you're super comfortable with, I would test it at this point. I would just like say test it, way earlier, test it throughout most of these sections just to see if it's working. But because I'm very comfortable with scripting, I do the bad thing, which is don't check it until the very end. Sorry, hopefully the video is okay. I just got some weird glitching. But what I was saying is if you are a regularly like newer to scripting, definitely check throughout because I'm going to find bugs probably at the end here and then we'll fix them. Anyway, so let's go into the last step here, which is to add an if statement. And there's a condition. We only launch the player if true, which is the distance between those two values. And so we're going to create a new vector variable, which is going to represent the current position. And so we've got the let go position and we have this current position, making sure that that doesn't compete with any of our origin position and stuff. And so we set this to be this. So we're going to grab the set to, drop that here. And we're doing this to make our script a little bit more efficient. And so set current position to be the current position of self. And then we can use current position here where we were previously using position of self. And now we can also use it here to make sure that the distance is greater than some value. And so in our case, we're going to use the number input of, I'm going to say 2.5 meters is going to be the value we want this to extend. So you have to throw it really hard to actually launch the player. And so then we go and grab the operators tab, scroll down to vector, and there's one called distance. And that's going to actually calculate the distance from one point to the other for us. So we grab current position to the let go position. And now that we have calculated that distance, if it's greater than 2.5 meters, we will then apply velocity to the player. And this does happen 0.5 seconds later. So just to be on the safe side, in case the player is like running away from you because you're throwing them and they've left the world, we're going to also make sure that they're still in the list and they haven't actually left the world in that half second between the throw, which is possible and could potentially create a bug, and we don't want bugs. So there we go. Okay. So with this setup, I am going to drag this into here since we don't need to run that unless that's true. This updates there. That will only run there. This looks great. So the script is good. It's time to put the object together. I did want to adjust the default settings. See, instances usually default on our return script. So I'm turning instant off under the variables tab. The delay is 30 seconds, but let's actually make this fun so people can throw all the time because people are going to love this. So we're going to do 10 seconds. And then auto return distance of 1 meter is totally fine, is held. I don't think we need to know any of that stuff. So here we go. With that all set up, we can now create the ball that you're going to throw. So we're going to go grab wrong one. Let's go to the build menu, shapes, sphere. And we're also going to grab a gizmo text object. There we go. And then I do want to test what a player's name will look like on this. So we're going to say Lakes 500,000. And I forgot the L in my name. Let's go add that back. There we go. I like to add a bunch of zeros to imagine somebody who has a really long name. And then we're going to grab some fun colors for this. So I like to go manual color slider. And, my favorite color is down here in this kind of bluey purple zone. There we go. That's it right there. So we'll go, and sure, we'll apply that here first. And then I also want to grab a unlit ball. No, we want a plastic ball. Let's go plastic. And we're going to go turn the shine up, drop the texture down a little bit, and then grab kind of this like speckled spot texture. That's quite cool right there. And then this needs to contrast with that since it is not, we'll go and change it to white. And then we want this to be maybe coming out the top like that. And you could always adjust the text. It's not super important where it goes. Okay, so with that set up, we can now select these two, group them together. You'll notice a couple things here. Number one, I've left this as a perfect sphere, so it will roll really well. Just be aware that it rolls. The second thing here to note is the text object, I left this open so that I wouldn't have to zoom into the group. That's this button here to zoom into the group to reopen the properties panel. So now on the group's property panel, I can grab throw ball. And now with throw ball, we can see that we need the text object to be referenced. So we'll grab the text, drop it in here. Now that that is referenced, I'm realizing we should probably have it say null on world start. And so it kind of clears it out. We also want to turn auto fit. Oh, you know what? If we leave auto fit on, it will always stay this size. So you can see if a person with a smaller name comes through, like Lakes05, for instance, it gets bigger. And if you have a longer name that's just ridiculously long, it'll actually look like that. So autofit might be the way to go because it'll keep it from running out of index. So let's go and leave it there, pop in here, and then when world is started, let's actually set the display to be null, which we had down here. So we can just duplicate this up. So I'll duplicate a copy and then drag it to the top under world start. Okay, there we go, world start. Now for throwing players to work correctly, there's a couple things we need to do. Number one, we need to go to world, player settings, and turn on custom player movement. Looks like somebody's already taken care of that, but I'll do it again just because sometimes it's finicky. Can hands collide with physical objects? I like to turn that off because that creates that slappy sound. Okie doke. And then I very highly encourage you to go into your world publish settings. And if this is a main mechanic, make sure to list this as moderate or intense, depending on how you set up your ball. Just to let people know that it's an intense experience, because it really is. This is the type of stuff where people end up a little sick. So we've made this ball interactive, grabbable. We're adding physics, so we click both. We're in a custom gravity, kind of might be fun. Yeah, we'll do custom gravity of minus like 4, so it has less gravity, so it'll kind of float off into the ether, which will be kind of nice. And visible, collidable, and I think that is going to be it. Okay, so our ball is ready to be thrown. We're going to stop the world just real quick, clear and play, and then come in and give it a try. So, hey y'all, who wants to be thrown first? Raise your hand. Giggles, all right, Giggles then Addie. Okay, so I've just selected Giggles, and here you go. All right, so you can see it did give her a little hop, not as crazy as the throw. So we can go improve that in just a moment. You're going to see this ball should reappear in like, what, 10 seconds did we set it? 15, 5, 4, 3, 2. We might want to increase the time so you can use it more often. Okay, so let's try just a little bunny hop, Giggles. Yeah, we're going to need to give you some more momentum. Let's maybe go fix that, and then we'll give you a throw, Addie. 1 second. Okay. So going back to our script, I'm going to stop the world in the interim so it's not potentially messing up our ball in any way. Okay, back in our throw ball script, we can adjust the amount of launch down here where we say launch by the direction. Sorry, where did I put that? Where is launch? There it is. Okay, so here it is. Add physical velocity to player. We are using current position minus let go position. We're going to duplicate this, delete this minus symbol, then go over to our operators tab and grab the multiply symbol. And then whatever we multiply this by is how intense the throw is. And so because this is a variable that you can adjust, we're going to go into our variables tab and call this throw intensity. Throw intensity. And we're going to set the default on this to be 5. So it's going to be a really, maybe 10. We'll set it to 10. Why not? It's going to be an intense throw. It should be fun, though. So we got a 10 on our throw intensity. And then the other thing that we wanted to do was, it was change our time. Our delay, our return delay, we're going to change down to maybe 7 seconds. 10 seemed like it was taking too long. 7. I would even think 5. I mean, I just constantly want to throw players. Like, is that crazy? I mean, come on now. Okay, we'll set it to 7, but we'll have 4 or 5 balls to select. Okay, and there we go. So with that, let's go and hit play, and it's Addie's turn. So Giggles, we'll give you another try at throwing in a second. So I've got you selected, Addie, and oh shoot!
Oh my
Are you
goodness,
okay?
I love it. I love it.
She loves it. She loves it. She loves it. Ah, it's so good. You're gonna have to come back into build mode because you are just gone. So Giggles, you are up next. Look at her go, and she's out.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah. So this one substantially better. So the question is, if you accidentally let go of it. So we're gonna go select myself. So if you just kind of let go of it, doesn't really affect you. You throw it up just lightly, doesn't really affect you. You throw it up way lighter. Oh, whoa. Okay, I'm out. I'm out. You can throw yourself. Honestly, the fact you can throw yourself is amazing. Okay. Lots of safety things we should put in here, but let's go ahead and stop. And we're going to go into our throw ball script, and we're going to turn that intensity down to more like a 5. If you guys like 10, go ahead and increase yours to 10, but our default's going to be 5. Okay. The other thing that we needed to do was probably return the player. Like, let's be honest, they need to get back here. And so I'm going to teach you a really cool, I call it kind of like an advanced trick, but it's a really easy advanced trick that you should definitely know. So I'm going to show you that in a second. Was there anything else we needed to adjust in here? I don't think so. Okay. So here's the scenario. We're going into build mode and we're grabbing another awesome asset from the asset library, and it's called the return. No, it's not called return. What is it called? It's respawn, right? So you want the respawn script. I never write respawn scripts anymore because I can just grab this teleport and respawn one out. Okay. With this guy out, what I like to do is delete this one. We have the script here. We have the respawn point here. This respawn script receives trigger enter by player and then respawns the player to the spawn point. Now, this is an advanced technique because we're not doing anything too crazy, but we need to know where the spawn point is. So the object, we're going to call this the respawn trigger. And so we've got to assume that the players ideally hits the trigger, but they probably won't. And so what we do is say, when object is released, when we launch the player, if we do launch the player, we're going to send an event with delay. And this event is going to be called respawn. So we're going to call this one respawn. So this way you don't have to leave the world and come back. So we send event respawn, and that delay, we'll just make it the same delay we have on our return object delay, right? So we send it with delay. And then what is going to happen is when we send respawn, sorry, I actually did this wrong. I'm just going too fast. So he's sending an event to the respawn trigger with the current player ID. So we need to put parameter current player ID, and the event we're sending is actually trigger enter. So there it is. Trigger enter is sent to the respawn trigger after a delay with the current player ID. So after that delay, they've been thrown, they will then come back. With that in mind, you kind of want to be thrown for a lot longer than 7 seconds. So we're going to change it up to, let's say 15 seconds. You get a nice tour of the world, and then the ball will return with you. Now, that means on our respawn trigger, we are going to respawn the player. So we're going to go back up to our respawn script here, and that's not it. There it is. And so our respawn script responds player to spawn point. But I have a very fancy trick. And so we're going to add an if statement that says if the distance the player is from the respawn point is greater than a certain amount. And so what this does is it says if the player's already been respawned, like they fall off the world and they do hit the spawn point, they won't get respawned twice. So we're just checking to make sure that the distance, so we'll scroll down and grab the distance to, and we're going to check the distance of the player to the spawn point. So we'll then go to our position of object, and the position of player is down below that. And then it doesn't matter what part of the players we're checking. It can be, I prefer for torso, but you can use any position really. So position of player, position of spawn point. If that is greater than, we'll say 10 meters, then we respawn the player. So we don't respawn players back to the spawn unless they are far enough away. There we go. So trigger enter by player. If they're within 10 meters, they don't get respawned. If they're greater than 10 meters away, they get respawned. So then we can now take our respawn point. And another cool trick that I like to do with respawn scripts like this is actually put a collidable cube below it. And the reason we do this, you make it invisible, of course, is so that when the player hits it, they actually hit the floor and they stop moving. Because triggers run on a per frame basis. And so what that means is that if the player hits the trigger or like flies through fast enough, say they've got really bad lag, or they've got a really poor internet connection, they will not hit the trigger. They'll fly right through it and not get respawned. By adding a cube, they will hit the cube, giving the trigger time to detect the player and respawn them. And so that is why we do that. So now we've got a respawn point in here. We now need to reference that up to here. So we're going to go grab our ball, open this up, and bring this over to our respawn point. It's actually not the respawn point now that I think about it. It's actually the trigger that we're referencing. So we're going to go and grab this here and reference trigger here. There we go, respawn trigger. Now, if you don't have this reference, the player will not get respawned. So if you wanted to use this for banning people, which I'm not saying I condone, but if you did, you just wouldn't connect the respawn trigger. Okie doke. So y'all know who's using it in that way, but we'll not say names. Now, as far as I'm concerned, I love having the ability for people to come back and get thrown over and over again. But you could have a red version of this ball, say Jordan, and that red ball could be the one that's not connected to the respawn trigger. He's like, dude's calling me out. Yeah, if you, we'll go ahead and make sure this says spawn on start. And so I need to go grab the respawn and teleport script and put that over here as well. There we go. Okay, so we've got our scripts there. We've got our ball here. And yeah, you could totally have a red ball that when you throw the person with the red ball, it could be like an admin ball, like put an if statement on it, so only Jordan could use it, for instance. If you haven't seen the VIP video, you should be able to find that on the Meta Horizon YouTube channel. We made that with Phoenix for VR back in the day. It's a lot of fun. Okay, so there's your balls. I'll show you really quickly how to make the red one. So if you need red balls, blue balls, green balls, orange balls, all the balls, we got them here. So go ahead and make them whatever color you like. So here's our red ball. And like I said, you just go ahead and click the X button to unhook the trigger, and that's the one. And then if you really wanted it to be a VIP ball, because we're at it, why the heck not? We're just going to quickly add a VIP Boolean. So we grab Boolean and we say VIP only. Click confirm. And then the way I do VIP nowadays is I create a string list that's called our VIPs. And you can add people to the VIP list by just dropping down, click new item, type their name in exact with capitals and everything. So like Lakeso5 as a VIP, although I'm in the Vidyuu account right now. So I'd want to add, say, Vidyuu as a VIP, VIDYUU. And you'll also want to add Jordan or whoever else is your VIP. And so with those VIPs, what you can then say is when the object is released, or when the object is released, we run, an additional if, indenting this if here. And we say, actually, one step different. Thinking through my brain. This if actually goes into here, sorry. And so this if statement says, if it is VIP only, we're then going to do a check with this VIP. And so the way I like to do this is creating a new Boolean that you might remember from earlier. And this is called the can throw Boolean. So we're bringing that can throw back. And so what we can do is set can throw to always be true. And then if the VIP comes in, so it says if VIP only, set can throw to be, remember what we did before, we checked the list contains items, setting the Boolean to be that. So if they are a VIP when they let go of the ball, we can say can throw is only true if the list of VIPs contains the name of the person who is throwing the object. So we're going to go grab name of player and drop that into the current play spot. And then the name of the player who let go of the ball is the person we want to be VIP. And then what we do is grab an if statement here below that says, if can throw is true, then we do this. And by default, can throw is true and VIP only is false, which means if we come down to our VIP ball, we can now enable VIP on this ball. And I'm noticing the respawn trigger didn't get linked in. Oh, that's right, we removed it. Duh. So it says VIP only, can throw. There we go. And so now I'm going to go ahead and clear. In fact, we're going to do a real quick fun thing here to build a little holder for these guys. There we go. And then we'll build a little side panel to hold them in. Drag that to here, drag that across to there, pull it up just a little bit, skinny it up, dupe and slide. And then because we like fun colors, we're going to go grab another awesome color called metal. Metal's just a great color. I mean, wait, what would you call metal? Oh, it's a material, duh. We'll do a fun blue metal. There we go. That's cool. And then I'd like to just kind of bring this in maybe to the midway point right there. And I'm not sure if I'm okay with that, but I think we'll be okay with that. And we'll drag that down to here. Nice. Delete this one. And then duplicate from here to there, and then slide and snap to there. Okay, cool. Cool. So go ahead and script play. Now they'll stay in that little area. Except for this one for whatever reason. Dude, what's wrong with you? Let go. You okay? There you go. All right, so y'all come. Oh, that trough is a little too high. We'll go ahead and try that one more time. Drag that down. There we go. Oh, you know what we could do with these? These could be dragged down to the bottom of the floor. Oh, yeah, that's way better. That's what this needed. Okay, so now everybody come on in. And this is the VIP ball. So I'll say, Addie, can you try and grab this VIP ball? And now if you change the thing by pressing your index trigger, change it to a player, and then try and throw it. It shouldn't do anything. Just throw it real hard. Okay, we're going to need to throw it a little harder than that.
Okay. Maybe I need to stand up.
Hey, that should have done it, and nothing happened. So, but if I give you this one with my name on it, go ahead and give that a throw. Oh, we're going to...
Oh.
There you go. Nice. And look, you can see it gave me a little bunny hop. Very nice. Very nice. And so that's how the VIP ball works. Now, I should also get respawn, but I'm right next to spawn, so I probably won't. But if I throw myself really high, 15... Oh, wow. Here I go. So 15 seconds later, I got respawner. Maybe the time was different. Nice. But anyway, there we go.
Nice.
Yeah. So I'm back. So, yeah, guys, go ahead and try throwing yourself or throw your favorite colleague. Why can't I see anybody other than Vidyuu?
How do you do it?
Are you guys only seeing Vidyuu?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, only Vidyuu. Torture Vidyuu.
Go into build mode. Go into build mode for me. Jordan in build mode? Okay. So in build mode, sometimes it doesn't calculate player enter events. So we have to go into build mode and then hit play world and then re-enter the world. And now we should see everybody's names on there. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and select Giggles and say, bye, Giggles! That's what I wanted to give you in the beginning. All right, and then we'll give Jordan a good throw.
Bro.
Woo. Yep, so there you go.
You back, bro.
You got me! Oh, I'm way further. I am so much further than you. Oh, my
you shot so fast.
I don't know where
Wow, that was cool.
5, 4,
that was
3,
so
come
cool.
on. How long does it take to respawn? 10, 9. Oh, there we go. I'm back. Thank goodness it's got a respawn on it.
Awesome.
Okay. Cool stuff, you guys. So there you go. That's the throw your players. How do we made it? I'm going to, you're going to have to try and find one of these people, but everybody save this to your asset library. I'm going to invite everybody I'm friends with who's online. Although it's been broken. I don't know. We got to Meta, please fix this stuff because it's so hard to share things right now. I legit tried to add everybody and it just wouldn't. So I saw some people online that I thought would help us get this out. Right. Editor. And let's see. Just want to invite everybody who's online if it'll let me. And then if you guys want a copy, I'd try and find these people. If you know any of the people you're seeing in this room or in this thing, just be like, hey, I heard you had access. But it's so hard to share. So just Meta, please, if you're listening, get us better sharing features because we want better, we want to get this stuff out to y'all. But in the meantime, there's how we made it. And then if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Join our Discord, honestly. Actually, don't leave the questions in the comments. Just join us on Discord. I'm constantly looking at Discord, but YouTube comments sometimes get filtered. And, if you don't know where our Discord is, Vidyuu.com. You can see the Discord link is in the footer. With that, I'm going to say goodbye. I realize y'all are in the party, so nobody's been able to hear you guys, which is sad, heartbreaking. But they've all been talking and saying hi. So now we're all going to wave bye. So bye! They're screaming bye. I promise. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
He said, I promise. Bye.